Mhm. There we go. All right. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So today we have a multi-talented individual. Her name is Casey. We'll talk about her nickname and where that originated from, which is Sully. We'll talk about that a little bit here. But ideally, I'm going to name her the confident boss. I could have named her the fashion boss and all these other things, but the confident boss kind of she oozes confidence. So the floor is yours, Casey. Tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what would you like to talk about today?
Man, it's a loaded question. So yeah, I am a confidence strategist and image consultant. Really, my specialty is a hybrid of helping people build up internal self-confidence and empowering them to package it externally in the best way possible using wardrobe as a tool. So I will nerd out on anything confidence related. I have a 17-year background in fashion, starting with modeling and then into fashion design. And I've done PR and merchandising. I've done high-level fashion photography styling, done styling for film and TV. And then I moved into the rehabilitation services space, which is where the internal piece came from. So really focusing on helping people build that up from the inside out.
I mean, yeah, that's a lot to unpack. So I guess just start off with the image consultant, the wardrobe coordinator area of expertise. Like, let's start with that first. 'Cause I mean, obviously, like every time we see you and then we see you networking, like you're always looking hella fabulous, right? So
Thank
just
you.
talk about like what got you to that point to kind of even start a business that where you're doing styling per se.
So I have always been kind of my own person when it came to fashion. I remember fighting with my mom when I was like 3 and 4 over the things she wanted me to wear and the things that I was willing to wear. And after a couple tries, she just realized, you know what? I'm gonna let you do your own thing as long as it's not like indecent. So she did, or both my parents did. Were really good about letting me be creative and just do all the things. So you can go through photos and there are like time frames where I went through extreme versions of myself. I have had my hair any which way. All the things. So that was kind of how it began. It was just my way to be creative. And then I started falling in love with the design piece of it as a little kid. I got a kit for my birthday that let me draw people and clothes when I was for my 5th birthday. And I just started doodling clothes from there. And so I just kind of fell in love with it.
I think that's very cool. So, I mean, one of the things, the terminology that if someone's not in fashion, that they don't really comprehend what this is like a lookbook. So I want you to kind of talk about like, what is a lookbook and how should someone really use a lookbook to kind of get their confidence in their wardrobe?
When you use lookbook, what can you explain what you're meaning by that is?
So, I mean, like generally in fashion, there's two different folds of looking at it. Like, obviously, as a fashion designer, you could have a lookbook with all your multiple looks in it, and that's kind of like your portfolio. And then on the style side, obviously, you could have multiple different looks, and that's something more of what you do with your clients, right? You will go into their wardrobe and give them multiple different looks, and then that way they can kind of go into their wardrobe without having to think anymore. So again, like you're delivering a lookbook to them by telling them exactly what to wear and how to wear it.
Yeah, so it's super fascinating because we all have stories that we've labeled ourselves to. We have ideas of who we are based on our self-image, our body image, and we make clothing choices around those stories. And what I really love to help my clients do is to understand what those stories are and help challenge the status quo in that, because most of the time we're not very nice to ourselves and it's not a great story. So being able to utilize clothes from a standpoint of now I really understand this is your unique body. This is where you're at in your life right now. This is what your goals are, what your day-to-day lifestyle is like, what your budget is, and how do I really help facilitate something that serves you on a day-to-day basis and puts your best foot forward. And so being able to really have those conversations with people to develop out outfits for them that help them feel more secure about themselves, because then they show up in such a different energy. And that's how I really get to use a lookbook from a styling perspective with clients now. And they're just done for you looks. So going into their closet, knowing I've got a big presentation today, and I know I pulled these 3 items and I feel and look fabulous. Boom, done. Lookbook accomplished.
Nice, very nice. I think one of the signature things that you stated before, and I think I seen it on like one of your social media pages, was like confidence is such an overlooked superpower. So I want you to kind of talk about like how does confidence essentially become a superpower through what you're doing by helping people through their garments that they're wearing?
Oh man. I think confidence is really one of the most overlooked pieces of your competitive edge, right?
Mm.
It's like the one thing that you can continue to develop that nobody can take away from you. So I really love to be able to facilitate every tool in your toolbox possible to help put your best foot forward, and understanding what you like and why you like it and how to implement it. Again, just builds confidence in that one space. And it's the same thing with like building confidence on a skill. Like what skill do you need to learn to overcome the next challenge, the next achievement you're trying to get to? And so it's being able to really own the fact that, like anything else, presentation, wardrobe, all that stuff is a skill that you can learn and develop. And a lot of people have just never been taught to do it. So if I can come in and educate and empower, then they get to go and out and like be their best boss, right?
I mean, I definitely see that. I mean, I think it's humorous because I mean, obviously, if someone's looking at this video right now and there's obviously you're sitting down on something, they have no clue how tall you really are. And I think you kind of play into that a little bit. And it was a image of you in front of the Eiffel Tower, and you was like, "Hey, look, see, I'm not really that tall." But in reality, you're like 6 feet tall. So I want you to kind of like, just by being that tall, that comes with like confidence, but it also comes with like a stereotype of being like noticing that you are taller than other people. So I want you to kind of talk about when you were growing up and you were a little bit taller than the average person, how did that affect you to become more confident?
So it's so funny you bring that up. I actually was not tall growing up. I hit my growth spurt super late. So I think I entered into high school at about 5'2", 5'3". And I hit my growth spurt really, really big, like right at the kind of the beginning of my junior year, and then all the way through my junior, right before my senior year. I grew like 7 inches that year. So one, it was very painful, and I was super awkward. Like all my motor skills were very awkward. So I don't think, for me, my height, I didn't really have that to play on when I was younger. My sister was the tall one. Now I've outgrown my sister by several inches as an adult, but I didn't really look at height as a confidence piece for me until much, much later. And still, even, I think my brain is so cognizant of just me being in my own skin that I don't even think about myself as being tall until I'm like standing in a photo with 5 other people that are a head shorter than me. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a little taller than average. And I don't know if that's a gift or a curse, honestly, because I know a lot of tall women that have struggled with confidence because they felt awkwardly tall. And I have never once had an issue rocking a 5-inch pair of heels at 6 foot tall. Didn't faze me at all. I am happy to do it. And so I don't know if that's just because of that fashion piece that leans into me and I like using that as a way to stand out, or if it's because my growth spurt hit so much later and I was already much more established in myself as an individual that it didn't faze me as much. But I definitely know height is something, particularly, well, for men and women for different reasons, can really affect confidence one way or the other.
I mean, yeah, like we joke around it around the house because like our daughter, she always says like, "Hey, I'm not dating anyone shorter than me ever again," because like she had bad experiences, and it's always like this ongoing joke. And I was like, so someone that's 6'5" is right for you because he's 6'5"? So kind of like in society today, I mean, height kind of has a nostalgia associated to it. And I'm happy that you brought up your sister Carrie. So I want to like how did that like with your sisters, right? I mean, both of you guys are like she's taller than you at one time, and then all of a sudden like, you shoot up past her. How has that affected her with her confidence, and how have you helped her to kind of build her confidence through her wardrobe? Or have you worked with her before?
Yeah, so it's funny. I think my sister, I think everyone in my family was honestly just surprised when I outgrew her because, like most young females, they hit their growth spurts much earlier, and she was very common in that she hit her growth spurt much earlier, and then she stopped growing by 8th grade. So nobody expected me to be the tall one at all. And I think when we all realized that I had just reached her height at about 5'8", because I really don't think my sister's short at 5'8" by any means, but it did throw her off. And honestly, I've never asked her if that affected her. It hasn't outwardly shown as something that I have noticed her to feel insecure about. So I don't have a great answer to the height question for that for her, but absolutely wardrobe, same thing. I think as females through our lives, our weights fluctuate, our lives transition, career changes. My sister's has 3 children. She's currently pregnant with her 4th. And like any female, pregnancy on your body really does something to your confidence when you are so wired in your brain as a society that we always need to be thin. And did we bounce back fast enough from that? So being able to, just love on her unconditionally, the same way I needed when I was dealing with health issues and my weight fluctuated big, is being able to remind people and empower people to feel really confident, even if their body isn't what they think they want it to be.
I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, obviously, you can kind of hear a sense of you being someone that cares, right? So it kind of leads me to like your career. I mean, obviously, you've talked about rehabilitation, but also, I mean, you worked with children's homes, you did wig fittings, you did like juvenile prisons. I want you to talk about like all these collective things that you've done to give back. Like, where is that shit even stemming from, and how did you even get that involved in giving back to the community?
So that's a great question. It's really funny. I was raised in a household that's just what we did. Like it wasn't even a question. It was second nature. My dad was a school teacher. My mom was a nurse, 45 years as a nurse, 40 years as a school teacher. They definitely lived lives of service. And even in the summers when my sister and I were little girls, my dad, as a summer activity, would take us out in the morning and have us pick up, I grew up in rural Texas, have us pick up trash out of the road ditches for recycling. And then at the end of the day, we would take all that to the recycle place, and we would get to take, whatever we earned from it, $1.25, we would put it in our piggy bank. And at the end of the summer, we got to take that money from recycling that we earned and buy a toy. Or, something that we wanted for school or whatever it was. And so I think it came so easy for me because I was just, in my opinion, blessed in the sense that my parents just that was what you did. You give back when you can, you do the things that you can. My undergrad school, my scholarship was in service and volunteer work. Like that's what paid for part of my education, just because I had that background in all those things of lots of different service projects in middle school and high school. I had the opportunity to do a mission trip with a medical team in high school after Hurricane Mitch. We went and helped the squatters in Honduras. And that was something I did alongside with my sister and my dad as well. So I think I was just not even thinking about it. You just understand that, like, hey, I have this appreciation for all the things I've been given, and let me go and do. So.
I think it's fascinating, and I'm happy you brought up your dad. I mean, like doing my due diligence, I keep digging and digging and digging, and I got pretty deep into your history. So I mean, I think that's a side effect of your dad's education. I mean, he was a political science major, right? So
Yep.
like giving back to the community is something that was ingrained in him. So I want you to kind of to talk about that, because your dad also was a librarian at the high school that you went to, right? I don't
Yep.
know if that was while you were there or after. So I want you to kind of like talk about that. Like, how does it and what is it like growing up in a household with somebody that's so highly educated? And I would think that that's something that he would probably look forward to seeing his kids step into as well.
Yes, both of my parents valued education to the nth degree. Both of them came from very humble farm families in the Midwest, and they didn't have a lot. And I think just the opportunities that they were presented just to get an education was such a big deal then, that they both just very much thought, I don't care what you do, I don't, but just go and learn and do something. And it was heavily emphasized in my household. And my dad, man, he was so highly intelligent. But the thing that made my dad super cool, and what I think his superpower is he had such an emotional intelligence and such a social intelligence on top of that. He knew how to connect with people beyond anybody I've ever experienced outside of him. And he knew how to just meet people where they were at. And when he was able to do that, then he could teach them at a different level. And I can't tell you what, even at his funeral, the outpouring of previous students. I mean, you have 40 years of teaching, 20 years in a library, 20 years in a classroom. The students that reached out to our family just to say the impact that he had. My dad taught AP government and economics for 20 years, US history for the first half of his career. And that's a subject a lot of kids don't love. They're like, this is stupid. I don't need this stuff. But they always left his class feeling like this was incredible, because he was able to not just teach a subject, but to connect with people. And I think if I could say I got any gift from him, it was the ability to just slow down and be able to try to listen. And I'm not perfect at it by any means, but try to meet people where they're at. And when I can do that, I can help them at their best.
Which is, I think, definitely interesting, because I think from a fashion standpoint, most people think it's visual. But what you're saying is like you have to listen to what the problems are to be able to help people find their confidence and then dress for them to impress themselves versus impressing anyone else. Is that correct?
Oh, so much so. I mean, yes, fashion is obviously visual, super visual.
Yeah.
But fashion is literally just a reflection of what's going on internally for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, and people kind of look at me weird, because people come to me and they're like, oh, I want you to help me with my wardrobe. I want to look cute, da, 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 da. I'm like, okay. And I have not sat with a client or just even a friend prior to actually doing this as a job without them having, the minute we walk in their closet, there is immediately an emotional reaction, because we have so much baggage tied to stuff. We have so many labels about our bodies, about our titles, our, like, all the things that our self-image is built around, that need for, acceptance from the people around us, the community around us. And we carry those labels around with us if we don't feel like we fill up enough space in that. And it all comes out when I start working with people in their clothing. And so I started realizing really early on in doing the fashion piece that, again, fashion was just a tool of projection or a mask to hide the pain. So if I can help you put on a great outfit, but we haven't first worked on what was going on inside, it's not sustainable for the person. And that made me really sad. I'm like, you just invested in all this stuff for yourself, and 6 months down the road, I'm going to run into you at the store and you're not going to be wearing any of it. You've gone back to your previous habits because we didn't do any other work first or alongside of it. And I think being able to do great outfits is powerful, but the power is exponential if you also do the internal piece with it, because it's a reflection.
So I would think, kind of going back to your dad, like you're carrying on his legacy. And like you said before, there's so many different ways of educating someone, but you have to make that pure connection like your dad did. And then by making that connection, then you could actually educate them. So it kind of leads me into, like, your dad's nickname was also Sully. So I want you to kind of talk about that. Is that something that obviously you're carrying his legacy as far as his nickname, but you're also carrying his legacy as far as how you're establishing your relationships?
I've never really thought about it, I don't think. obviously you can probably tell from this, like I was super close to my dad. I have so much respect for him and the human he was. And that's not to say he didn't make mistakes and all the things, but if I am able to carry on his legacy at the fraction that he had, then, oh man, I have superseded my goal in life. So, but yeah, I think playing sports growing up, people kind of always give you nicknames. And a lot of times they lean into like last names, or if you have like a quirky little name or something like that. And I think it was my freshman basketball coach, who obviously my dad teaching in that school district, she knew him, and she already called him Sully. So she just started calling me Sully on the court. And so it just kind of stuck through those years. And then, so it's just interesting.
Everything has like etymology behind it. Like, it's like, what is the story behind the story, right? So it's just kind of like, it's interesting to see this unfold, which kind of leads me to like, you had an opportunity not only to model, but you also had an opportunity to work with Disney as well. Two separate hemispheres, two separate worlds, right? So I want you to talk about that, like that journey of being a model and then having an opportunity to work with Disney behind the scenes on their costumes and wardrobes.
Whew. Both blessings in their own right, both challenges in their own right. I did not, and this is why I am so passionate about what I do on the confidence piece, not just the wardrobe piece. I was not a person that grew up with a lot of self-confidence. If you talk about like so much of what goes on in your life is mental, I think in sports, they say 80% mental, 20% physical, right? I think that's actually true in most of our lives. So much of what happens is mental. We control the stories that are happening. And I did not have a lot of self-confidence growing up. And when I look back at that now, I can draw the dotted line all the way to chapters of my life that I wouldn't change because they brought me to where I am today, but could have gone so much differently in the moment if I had actually just had confidence in myself. Modeling was not something I wanted to do or thought I could even do. It was something that was suggested to me and an offer was made. And again, I'm 6 foot tall at that time. I was, 112 pounds or something, much to the smaller size than I am now. And I don't say that to be degrading to myself. I'm really good with that. But it was an offer. And at 20 years old, I thought, well, okay, but I didn't believe I could actually do it. I just saw an opportunity to go overseas on somebody else's dollar. And I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I go home, right? And so I just was like, all right, I'm going to take the opportunity. It sounds fun and it'll be an experience. But I never really expected it to go anywhere. So when I started seeing mild successes, I was really shocked. And I don't think I knew what to do with that. And so I didn't really own it to the ability that if I had the opportunity now to do, I think I could have taken it to a whole different level. But I just didn't have that confidence in myself to even try. I still was just like, you want to put me in front of a camera for other people? Like, why? I just couldn't wrap my brain around it. And that affected how I showed up, in that industry. But on top of that industry, as many of amazing experiences, and again, something I consider a blessing that I got to do, was not something that was really in my value system. I really struggled with a lot of situations I was put into. I really struggled with a lot of personalities I was having to be around on a regular basis. And it was really hard on my mental and emotional health. On top of just the pressure of body in general. I mean, when your whole job is going day to day to look for another job based on your body, and you have 5 people in one day tell you are or are not worth a paycheck because your body looks a certain way and they either do or do not like it, it really took a toll on me because I already, again, had no self-confidence. So now you're telling me, oh, I'm worth a paycheck. Oh, I'm not. and it's all based on an image, an external one. So I knew early on modeling was not a career I really wanted to go into long term, but it was an opportunity, and I just kind of jumped on it. And that took me, again, I got to do Paris, New York. I ended up in LA. And then when I got to LA, I was just kind of at the height of my emotional and mental, ability to take that industry as it was. And I knew I had always wanted to go to fashion school. So I thought, well, this is the time. I'm in a city, it's available to me. I can, afford to take myself to school. And so I did. And so that's when I went into fashion design. And my opportunity with Disney was a total fluke also. Again, total opportunity. I was bartending my way through school, and one of my regulars was a full-time Disney employee for the Disney Channel, and she was a stylist. And they had a special project for a custom dress that they needed for a music video. And she didn't make custom pieces, she only styled. So she was like, hey, do you want to come do this project? We'll pay you. And I was like, Disney? Let me check my schedule. And that opportunity rolled into more opportunities. And so again, it was just like, you do a good enough job and you have the opportunity to get your foot in the door, and you're like, oh, okay. And so you just like take the ball and you roll with it. And again, so I was, again, very fortunate to have opportunities that I just didn't see possible for me, but I was at least aware enough to just take it and try.
I think that's a hell of a segue. I mean, obviously you're talking about like you deal with fashion, you deal with the visual, but you're also trying to build confidence. And like prime example, you brought up the bartending. So I think it was on your Facebook page back in 2008. That's when you was a bartender, and it was a picture with you and Saki. And the comment on it was like, what pretty bartenders we have. So it kind of goes back to what you're saying. Like, I mean, you're hearing everyone telling you that you're pretty, but you were dealing with confident issues. So I want you to kind of talk about like today, and I'm gonna be frank. Do you believe that you are pretty, and because you believe that you are pretty, is that how you're able to help other people see their inner beauty?
Yeah. So yes, I do believe I'm pretty. And I don't say that to say, because beauty is so subjective. We all have such a different view of what beauty is. And I think that's why it's so sad that we get caught in our own heads of, oh, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not beautiful enough. Because at the end of the day, it is so subjective. And you could poll 10 people and they're all going to have a different answer. So understanding that now with the depth that I understand it changes my ability to see it in myself. Because for me, my confidence, my belief in my beauty is grounded in something so different than my external. And that helps me even on the tough days, because again, if anybody that's gone through any sort of self-help, like self-work, self-development, counseling, whatever, you make progress and then you have backslides, right? You make progress and you have like, oh, like, ugh. So it's not to say that I still don't have days where I struggle with the same common bullshit insecurities that we all struggle with, because we do. But now I have the tool set to like catch myself in it in awareness and flip the script so it doesn't check me out of the game. Because at that point, it took me out of the game. I ended up having some health issues. I put on 100 pounds in 9 months, right about that time frame that you're talking about, 2008. And that was hard working in the industry in LA that I worked in. I went from being the pretty girl that everyone wanted to party with because I could get them into clubs to, oh, no, we're not, like, we're avoiding you in public. Like, you learn really fast who your friends, I learned really fast who my friends were, like, truly. And the audacity that people have to make comments, I just was blown away. But at that point in my life, I had unknowingly tied my entire self-worth and my entire self-confidence to the reflection in the mirror. And when that became out of my control, I fell apart. And that's why, again, I'm so passionate about doing this piece now.
So, I mean, I think that's a good segue to talk about like your 30-day confidence challenge, right? I mean, obviously, I would think anyone that's not confident, by going through your challenge at the end of the 30 days, if they're not 100% confident, at least they have a blueprint on becoming more confident. So I want you to talk about that challenge, and who is it really for? How does it help? And if somebody's coming to you that's highly not confident, what's your first steps to help them become more confident?
Ooh, such a good question. So I think the first step in anything is awareness. It's figuring out where the baseline for somebody is, so you know where to start building, because we're all different. We all have different stories. We've all been through different experiences. We all have different reasons why we're struggling with self-image or lack of confidence, body image, any of that. And so being able to really assess my clients first is super important for me to know where to kind of start.
Mhm.
But as a general, having small actionable steps for anybody to take can help build skills, whether, in this instance, skills of confidence. So my 30-day challenge is really giving ideas, action steps that take you anywhere from 2 to 15 minutes, once a day for 30 days. Try these different activities. And the goal is to start building the habit of mindfulness, awareness, start really understanding the whys that you have these thoughts about yourself. Because if you don't understand the thought, you're not aware of the actual thought. A lot of them are so subconscious, we don't even think about them anymore, like on an external level. But they play into our overall story in our head, and it affects how we show up in the world. So this challenge is really focused on that, bringing awareness, teaching them habits to start building small steps of strategy towards building confidence, no matter what the reason for lack of confidence is. And then at the end of the 30 days, assess which of those activities you liked and which ones you didn't really benefit from, and just pick one and keep doing it. And if you just keep doing small actionable steps every single day, 2 minutes a day, a year from now, think about the progress that you can make. It's like if you put $1 away every day, it all builds. And that's what the goal of that challenge is. I would say really somebody that has either never had confidence or somebody that had confidence and it was taken away for some reason, some life transition. For me, it was weight gain through a medical issue. Some people, it's been medical double mastectomies, amputees, military, like the identity attached to their uniform, then they get out of the military and they don't know what to do. Job transitions, they got laid off, they got fired, got out of school, they're taking on a new job. So people that have a reason that their self-confidence has shifted for some reason, that's really a great way for them to start focusing in on awareness and building their confidence back, or maybe for the first time ever.
So I want you to kind of think about this next question as far as a fragmentation, right? I want you to kind of put these pieces together. If we could identify you just by using 3 to 5 keywords, what would those 3 to 5 keywords be to describe you?
Currently today,
Yeah.
or like over time?
Up to you. Choice is yours.
Right now, my anthem is ambition without apology.
Mm.
I am a recovering people pleaser. And I have spent so much of my life, and even the beginning of this business, of launching this business, filling my head with so much noise of everybody's opinions but mine. And it doesn't mean like I seek out coaching and mentorship. I think those things are amazing and needed and necessary. However, when you're a people pleaser to the level I have been over my life, it becomes almost detrimental when you get too many voices playing in, because now you're trying to please 6 different people because you're so worried that you're going to upset them or disappoint them or let them down, and you're not even doing what you actually wanted to do. And so I think right now where I'm at today is, from a standpoint of a recovering people pleaser, ambition without apology. I'm going after what I want because I know it's important and I believe in it so much.
I mean, obviously with that, I think you're still very philanthropic, right? I mean, you always still want to give back. Just looking at your history of what you've done And I think that's just part of who you are. So I want you to talk about, let's say, from 2000 until now, right? This is like how long it took you to get to where you are, to become who you are, to be hell of confident. But if you had an opportunity to go back and change anything or visit yourself for 5 minutes and have a one-on-one conversation, when would you go back to and what would you say to yourself to make you be who you are to happen a lot faster?
Um, hmm, that is a marvelous question. Oh, there's so many points I can think at. And it's because, as I mentioned, I was not a self-confident person growing up. And so there are so many times I can think of, if I just had an ounce of confidence more, it would change the trajectory of that. And so if I really, really think about it, the first experience I can think of where I remember just like I was a little kid that was just bigger than life naturally, like just get out of my way. But you go to school and you have people tell you all these things. You have kids make fun of you for certain things. You have whatever, and you start to listen to all these things, and they weigh on you, and you start to like shrink because you don't want to always be the person that's being called out. But in reality, when I look at it, that was my superpower. I just needed to learn how to control it better. And so I think I probably would have told my little second grade self that, you know what, hold on to that. I don't care if you go to the principal's office another time, hold on to it because you're going to need her. And I tucked her away for a very long time.
I think that's definitely, I mean, a lot of people, right? If they can kind of go back to school, their school age is kind of like where they would pinpoint some kind of split fork in the road, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm just thinking about like the next step in this interview. And I want you to kind of talk about like obviously you talked about your mom and your dad, one being a nurse, one being a teacher, being a librarian. But again, you're a hell of an entrepreneur and you have this savviness. And even like the three words to describe you, you're talking about being unapologetic about your success path, right? So I want you to talk about like where is your entrepreneurial insight and journey coming from? Is it 100% from coaching? Or is it a byproduct of some ancestor before you?
Whew. So I think it's kind of a combination of one thing that I learned from my parents was work ethic. I maybe won't be the best at something, but I will hella outwork somebody. And I can look over my life and see that over and over and over again. I still might not have the greatest skill set at it but best natural ability, but I will outwork you. And I learned that from my parents. And they grew up on farms. You didn't have days off. You didn't take breaks. Like you were always busy with something. And so I think that as an entrepreneur is so important because starting a business for the first time and having no prerequisite, no pre-information on that is hard work. There are no off hours really. My brain is constantly going through thoughts, ideas, no, yes, blah, and you probably know this better than most. Your brain is like on steroids compared to mine. So I think it's that I learned from my parents. What I have had to overcome through coaching and mentorship is confidence in myself to be an entrepreneur. And I'll tell you this story. My dad got really burnt out on teaching in the mid 90s. Things were shifting. The dynamic in the schools were shifting. The responsibility for teachers to like let kids not really earn grades necessarily became a thing. And my dad teaching higher level education got really discouraged. He's like, no, like they earn the grade they earn. I give them every opportunity, but they're not going to, if they flat out turned in no assignment, why do I have to give them 50%? Like, so he was really struggling with that. And then it was just a big shift. And so he decided he was just really burnt out on teaching, and he saw an opportunity to launch a business. And he, in all fairness, he did kind of get scammed by the guy that like sold him all the software and taught like all the teaching and stuff. And that's a whole nother story. But I remember at 10 years old, laying in his office floor while he was making calls for his new business. And he would literally talk himself out of sales. And he'd be like, well, now I want you to know I've never actually done this before. So I will give you your money back. I'm like, at 10, I was like, Dad, you can't say that. Like, they are not going to have any confidence in you to hire you. Like, you can be honest without just being forthright. Like, I've never done this. You're a guinea pig. So, but it was because he didn't have confidence in himself as an entrepreneur, right? He had only ever been a teacher. And I say that, but it's a different skill set, right? Like if you're not used to sales, if you're not used to the marketing, all the things, there's so many things as launching a business, I had to go and learn elsewhere because I didn't have that ingrained in me naturally.
I think, and again, I'm saying this without knowing all the details, so you can correct me if I'm wrong in anything that I'm about to say. But I think much like how you are inspired by your dad, I think your dad was inspired by his dad, right? I'm saying that based upon just like the due diligence I've done, and it was one particular picture in mind. It was you and your sister, and you were sitting down with your granddad, and your dad was talking about today he would have been like 117 years old, something
Yeah.
along those lines, right? And to you earlier, you said that your grandparents essentially were farmers, but by default, if you're a farmer, you're an entrepreneur. Like you're leading the pack, and you have to feed the family by selling stuff. And I'm just looking at that picture, and I could see like the eye of the tiger in your grandfather. So I want you to kind of like, do you think like where you are right now, as far as your family being as close knit as they are, is that something that you're looking forward to with your family moving forward?
Oh, 100%. I recognize, and we've spoke a lot about my dad. My mom was very much the quieter side, but still just as impactful in my life in very positive ways. Both of my parents are just so unconditionally loving, in their own ways. They show it in different ways. And so I know that I am of a very small percentage of people that had the upbringing I consider a blessing to be. And I can say that with confidence because we have had so many people throughout my life that have come and stayed with us. My parents have loved on, helped through, like people they didn't even know. Friends of mine I brought home because they didn't have anywhere else to go, all the things. And so I know that if I have children, that I would not be okay with giving them anything less than what I had. Now, it might look different. It might shape up in a different avenue, but to make sure that they always are grounded in, we're a family and we're here to love and support no matter what.
So, I mean, kind of just leading into that, I mean, obviously you're a byproduct of an environment that, most people don't have that opportunity to kind of be that close-knit family, a well-educated family on top of it. So I want you to kind of talk about like books that, okay, your dad was a librarian, right? So what books kind of helped you on your journey to become who you are and as confident as you are right now?
Books that have helped me in confidence? Whew. So here's probably a completely like left field answer, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. My dad would read to us at night, and I would fall asleep either rocking on his lap to an old Western show or MASH or Cheers, or him reading a chapter out of a book. And beyond like my little kid books like Cinderella and stuff, the first chapter book I remember him really reading to us was Bury My Heart, It Wounded Me, which is a heavy, deep book. But he was teaching it in his class, and I remember seeing him, and my sister and I went through a phase, in the early 90s where we were fascinated by Native American culture. Like we went to all the local powwows, and anything and everything we could do that had Native American culture art involved, we were just fascinated by it. And so My dad being a history teacher, he kind of embraced that and let us. But I think that was the first time I remember really feeling like empathy and like, wow. And that was kind of the trajectory that started all of that, and just that nurturing of it. And then from there, like, I feel confidence just from the ability to be empathetic with people where they're at. And that, I think, helps me in so many areas of my life. I don't have to understand it, but I can understand where you're at. And I can do that from a place of love. That has been like, and then books on confidence. Oh my gosh, there's a body image book I would highly recommend if you're struggling with body image. It's written by Dr. Cash. There's a Go Do the Work book, and I am totally blanking on the female's name right now, but again, another psychologist that wrote a book about how to like start implementing things to better yourself, like in small ways. And then just like every business book I can consume, right? When you're a new entrepreneur and you're like, just give me confidence in anything. But for me, the trick was not to get bogged down in the details of let me mimic it and why is it not working for me, but to take concepts and say what will work for me and who I am as a person, because they're not all going to be for you or perfect for you. And so I think if I could give any insight to that is don't get bogged down into every detail and trying to like duplicate, but just take concepts from it and try to make it your own. And that's, I think, where has taken me a journey in entrepreneurship to get to.
So, I mean, let's spin off of that. I mean, obviously you talked about all these different books, and have you had an opportunity, or are you thinking about publishing your own book sooner than later?
All right, so I was just having this conversation with a friend and client of mine. So in all reality, I've written several things. I haven't published any of them. And she's like, why is this not out there? And I'm like, I don't know, like, because I don't look at my content as being something that's like, it's just so easy in my brain. So I think it's still like, even today, at the journey I've been through, stepping back and saying, oh, not everybody can do this. Let me confidently own it and put it out there because it can help somebody. And it was just like literally that conversation the other day. I wrote a whole like 5-chapter book on how to find the best pair of jeans for yourself, because that is one of the biggest struggles I hear. Number one, is finding that unicorn pair of jeans that makes you feel fabulous about yourself. And, I did illustrations in it and everything, and it just sits in my computer. So yes, I do believe at some point I will publish some form of a book, maybe multiples. I don't know.
Well, I think it's funny, right? I mean, obviously you're well versed, right? You're well read, but somehow, some way, you figured out how to create a software, an app, but you haven't written a book, right? And I would think that both of these things should go together hand in hand. I'm putting you on the spot. Obviously, this next question is going to lead into talk about your technology a little bit, talk about your app. But I'm just saying, an app and a book, I'm just getting a little push, little push right there.
Little nudge. Yeah. I know the app is the coolest thing. And again, a tool that I underutilize so much. It's so funny that the app is really cool because it just helps me help my clients that much more. But I can upload, an entire person's wardrobe into the app and literally build them out outfits from it. And then we can do, like, when we're shopping for specific items, I can send them direct links to recommendations, and then they can comment and ask me questions, and I can comment back. I can build out customizable catalogs for people. So it is a phenomenal piece of software that I don't talk about enough. So thanks for bringing it up. And I don't utilize, enough for how amazing it truly is, honestly.
So let's just talk about it. I mean, so obviously you have a business, right? And one side of the business is helping people become more confident. The other side is helping them put wardrobes and putting garments together. So ideally, who is the ideal avatar or individual that can utilize your service and get the best benefits from it?
So anybody that had self-worth that was taken away by something that took it away, and now they're struggling. So like I'd mentioned earlier, it might be a health issue, it might be a job change, it might be a title, whatever that might be. But particularly kind of my sweet spot with people right now is women in male-dominated industries, finance, tech, engineering. It doesn't have to be that, of female entrepreneurs, because a lot of times they're bosses at what they do. They're incredibly good, but there is an imposter syndrome and an intimidation factor when they walk into a room for a board meeting or staff meeting, and they're at a room of 20 men, 2 women. And for whatever reason, the stories in their head, they like shrink. And they're not showing up as the actual professionals that they truly are, the bosses in their industry that they truly are. And so it becomes really powerful to help them kind of work through the mental limitations that are coming up for them and why. And then again, packaging them in a way where they walk in that room and they just own it, and they know they own it. And then they glow, and it's amazing. Oh.
Okay. So like, let's talk to that individual. That individual's listening right now. They're hearing you. They're getting inspired by you. What words of insight or wisdom would you want them to take away from this episode?
Ooh, there's so many. Where to start? What would be the baseline? I would say, if you find yourself in a position where you're constantly questioning whether you should speak up or say something, or think that you're going to be, ask yourself why. What is that limiting thought? And once you understand what that thought is, then you can do something about it. Maybe that's with the help of me or a different professional or a different, coach or mentor. Maybe that's through journaling practices and, upping their game and their own knowledge by reading or taking a course or whatever it might be. But my takeaway would be, don't hold yourself back because of head trash. If you are your biggest limiting factor, which most of us are our own worst enemies, self-sabotage is huge. Take the time to really sit with that and ask yourself, what is that stemming from? And maybe it's more than one thing, and maybe that will be a much bigger journey, but at least attempt to start the journey, because you're never going to get to your biggest potential. You're never going to reach that big, like scary, audacious, like goal you have unless you're willing to step out and try for it. And that's why I think confidence is so important, because it gives you the willingness to go out and try. It's just like, okay, I am confident enough to know that even if I don't get it right the first time, I can get out there and try. And then I can assess, tweak, make adjustments. Maybe it was, whatever you need to do, but you're never going to do it if you're constantly in your own head and holding yourself back.
Very true. So let's continue down now with that path, right? Someone's listening. You just gave them words of insight. How do they get in contact with you? Like, they're motivated right now. They want to become more confident. Where would you like to send them?
Well, I'll tell you what, right now, if you're today listening on whatever date this is, June 7th, June 8th, if you are local to Atlanta and a female, I am hosting an event Monday morning in the Queen Building, 8 a.m. But for that, it's totally free. Come and have fun. It's just a great way to get plugged into a community and see if it's right for you. Moving forward, like, that's a launch party that's for fun. It will be a virtual option. So I would say anything curating confidence, any social media platform curating confidence, LinkedIn, I think it's under Casey Sullivan, but also is connected to a curating confidence. So yeah, it's pretty easy. Casey and the Sunshine Band, that's how it's spelled. Just 2 little letters. And then everything curating confidence. So
Very cool. Very cool. So going into a couple bonus questions, right? I mean, obviously, I think earlier on, I brought up the superhero nostalgia of being confident. So if you could be a superhero, who would it be and why?
Man, so when I was little, I really fluctuated between Xena and Storm off the X-Men. I have just always loved powerful women, and the idea of powerful women. So I guess I think there's just so many incredible superheroes that you could pick from and all their different strengths. But I think just because that's my childhood nostalgia, I'll probably lean into that. Like just powerful women in general. I don't care if it's a superhuman strength or the ability to connect and read minds or, control the weather or whatever. Just own your power and own it big and bold.
Very cool. Very cool. So another bonus question, right? And again, we talked about you following in the footsteps of your dad, and your dad had an opportunity to meet his favorite author, which was David, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm going to stage this question to you. If you had an opportunity to spend 24 hours with anyone, dead or alive, uninterrupted for those 24 hours, who would it be and why?
Ooh. God, there's so many good answers to that. I think, and this is going to be super strange too. So I grew up in a very Catholic household, and my legal name comes from a couple different saints. So I think it would either be Saint Catherine or Saint Anthony. My name is Catherine Antoinette, because I think the confidence that it takes to stand by something you believe in through persecution, through giving up your entire income, your money, everything, to go and live with the impoverished, to do something you believe in that much, takes a hell of a lot of confidence. And I think that is just on whether you're religious or not, I think being able to understand that you have that much conviction in something, that's so powerful. And I would love to know why and how and how they embraced that and held on to it in the hard days and all those things. Because we live pretty cushy lives now, even on our hard days.
Definitely in comparison.
Yeah.
So I mean, that kind of puts time into the equation. So like, let's bump the time order, right? Like, where would you see, or where would you like for your business and for you to be 20, 25 years from now?
My goal is to be a disruptor in this industry. Honestly, globally, if I could have anything in 25 years, and it's not because I want to be the face of something, it's because I want people to be the face of their own lives. And I believe that everybody's capable of it and everybody deserves it. And I think there's so much in our culture and our society and that holds us back from really owning that and believing that, whether it's clothing and image, body image, whether it's the internal piece, whether it's combination of the things, just to be a true disruptor in this industry and to be able to revolutionize people's thoughts of themselves, to make a self-love the new relationship goal, then that would be an awesome 25 years in the future.
Very cool and well said as well. So going into closing, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the Boss Uncaged podcast. So now it's Boss Uncaged by KC. I am your interviewee. You're the host. What questions do you have for me?
Okay. So I am someone that I'm very like art side of the brain, but I have been trained to utilize a lot of my other one, but it will never be as powerful as someone that just naturally has the gift. So for you are so very like, I mean, you say it best, just what is the phrase you use?
50% creative, 50% analytical.
well, there's that, but you had like a dichotomy that you explained it with so well earlier today. But anyways, being that, when did you first realize that? When did you first tap into that as what I consider one of your superpowers?
Mhm.
Like, did you avoid that for a long time? Did it frustrate you? Did it overwhelm you?
I didn't even know it existed until college. I didn't like part of like when I tell my story, I always say that I was the weirdo amongst weirdos. So being that my first degree was graphic design and it was supposed to be the ideal environment for someone that was creative, and it was ideal for a portion of who I am, if that makes sense. And then in like prime example, like we would have like projects and the teacher would say, you need to do this, and these are all the requirements. And then literally 75% of the class would hit the requirements. Another 20% of the class would go a little bit outside the box and a little bit different. And then there was like me and another student that would do something that was completely like, and everyone would look at us like, what were you smoking to even come up with that? So again, it's kind of like being a weirdo amongst weirdos. And then on the analytical side was the same thing for me. Like people would think about analytical data when I got into like web design and multimedia. And prime example, like for my senior project, everyone was doing websites. And I was like, yo, I'm going to do a virtual reality website and I'm going to use a game controller to control it. Again, a weirdo amongst weirdos, but that was my creative side working on my analytical side. And I didn't really realize that both hemispheres could actually work together until I went through both those degrees. And then after I graduated, I was like, okay, now I understand why I'm a little bit different.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Do you
Appreciate that.
feel like moving forward, there's more that you can do to develop that? Like, because I feel like you already do so much to like bring those worlds together.
Mhm.
What would be your goal, like the ultimate with that?
And I think I'm still searching for it because again, like with my reach and with my podcast and the communities and everything else, I'm really looking for a predecessor to a certain extent, someone that can kind of understand my mind and possibly then proceed my mind. Like again, my time is limited. So like who is next to kind of takes this torch and expand the vision and even take it to leaps and bounds outside of the world that I think I can create on my own.
Mm. Do you feel like that affects your ability to implement? Like, okay, so you're super creative, super
Mhm.
analytic. You've got both of those sides. Do you struggle with implementation, or is that something that you like? Because I know there's parts of my gifts that I'm good at, and then I'm like, I got to delegate the rest because that's not my gift. Um,
So it kind of goes back to I didn't realize this until I met Justin, and he was just saying, "Oh, take this quiz, and this quiz will tell you exactly who you are. And you'll get these four numbers, and my numbers happen to be 2683." And I was like, "What the hell is 2683?" So come to find out, based upon your question, eight is someone that takes action, right? But then six is someone that takes, the initiative to actually complete those actions. So again, I'm like a high middle on taking the results of what I want to do and actually getting it done. And I'm also like an early adopter. I'll jump on it and learn it and then figure out what the next steps are. So again, like I'm kind of a weirdo amongst weirdos in that sense, because if you look behind me, like all the things behind me, like the books and the shoes, all of those are examples of me coming up with an idea and then within 24 hours, I'm executing it. And I'm like, all right, cool. It's next concept, next. So the next just keeps multiplying and multiplying to where essentially I'm always going to be building and creating something and stretching out myself a little bit too thin, but ideally, long as it's within one brand, one ecosystem, I should be able to survive it this time. Considering the first time I went down this route, I was kind of like, I'm going to do all these different things and I'm going to be an octopus. And then I almost died. So,
well, I'm glad you have a better structure on that now. Keep it all under the umbrella.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, literally, I'm at that point now. If anything comes up and it's not underneath the umbrella, I'm like, I have to turn it off. Like I'm a really good listener, but I have to kind of turn. I'm like, nope, nope, pineapples, nope, I don't hear you, nope, and I just kind of like completely shut it down because again, I know that I'll understand it, I'll learn it, I'll see the benefits of it, and then I'll take action like immediately. And I'm like, well, shit, like now I'm split into two different worlds. I'm split into four different worlds. I got to stay under the Boss Uncaged brand at least until my last breath, right? So
Yeah, at least there.
at least there, yeah. But I mean, but then like, I mean, what you're building, like you're building a whole legacy of confidence. And I'm thinking like, all the content that you're building, even like this podcast and other speaking on stages, like, again, think about it, 100 years down the road, these videos and these audio files, essentially, as long as we have technology and as long as we still have a grid, this information will essentially live forever. So, I mean, you're building your own legacy as well. And I think that the information that you gave today is not only insightful and powerful for women, but it's also a lot of men out there that can kind of hear what you're saying and also be confident, not be an asshole, but be confident.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction. I think a lot of times cockiness and egotism gets played off like confidence when it's really lack of. And male or female, it doesn't matter. So if you find yourself in that space where you're always trying to one up somebody, or the question is why? What are you feeling the need to do? Yeah, the same things. Like, I work with men as well, not as often, but men are struggling with the same struggles. It's just, it presents differently sometimes. I think a lot of times men aren't taught to discuss it or to share it or to think that it's okay to discuss it or share it. So there's boundaries there too that have to be worked through. But yeah, I don't try to leave men out in the fact that these problems are female only, because they're definitely not. We all as humans struggle under the same headspace, the same ability to create head trash for ourselves and to hear some little comment that somebody made to us on the playground when we were 6, and now we're carrying that around in our pocket, and we pull it out when we need some reason to dislike ourselves. We're like, oh, remember that time? And we do that so much. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think going into closing, I definitely appreciate everything you brought to the table. I mean, ideally, for the listener that doesn't know, Sully, or Casey, is also the president of our networking chapter under SEN as well too. So I have at least an opportunity to kind of meet and greet with her at least once a week. So having this conversation and really diving into who she is just, it's enjoyable for me. But at the same time, I think for anyone that's in our networking group, you kind of get to see a little bit more into who this boss really is.
Well, thank you. I love getting to hang out with you guys every week.
So do we. Well, in closing, I mean, I think that's it. I think it's a hell of an episode. And again, I think it's one of those situations to where just on that keyword of confidence, you bring a whole new level of what the definition of listener, rewind and listen to how we've defined confidence over and over again in so many different ways and so many different aspects on this episode. So again, I appreciate you being here today, Casey.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for coming to the table with killer questions. So you really did your research.
I appreciate it. S.A. Grant, over and out.